Game breaker, clutch gene, difference maker, whatever you want to call it, they all mean similar things. A player you can rely on when you're in a rough spot, even when your squad isn't putting up the best performance, to provide y'all with the boost you need to get a win. KDB is the perfect example of this, and it's why he's the most aggravating player I've ever had the displeasure of my team going up against. Off the top of my head, when he came on against Newcastle in his very first game back from injury last season, matter of fact, we can point to one of his most iconic moments when he assisted the winner to complete City's 2-0 comeback against Aston Villa on the last day to win the league. When we talk about Arsenal a couple seasons ago when they were first pushing for a title in the 2022 season, the main problem, other than the lack of depth that season, was the fact that they didn't have a reliable game breaker. In the second half of the season, there were numerous games where they found themselves in deadlocks, fighting to get that last goal that would keep them afloat, and they just couldn't get it. The 1-1 draw to Brentford, the 3-3 against Southampton, the 2-2 against Liverpool, the 2-2 against West Ham. Constantly, they just couldn't get over that last hump. Last season, instead of fizzling out in the second half of the season, they took it to the last day with City. And some people might point to the signings like Declan Rice as the reason, but it's not just that, because while Rice brought a lot of upside, it was to the detriment of some other things like the electricity and threat of Arsenal's left-hand side attacking-wise after losing Xhaka. One of the main reasons they improved overall was because Bukayo Saka stepped up as a player that could be relied on in high-stakes situations when they desperately needed a goal contribution. When you look at the number of times he saved them, it gets to a point where you're kind of concerned about what would happen if Saka was sidelined for a while with injury. First week last season, he bangs in a screamer that turns out to be the winner because Forrest got one back later on. He assisted Rice's late winner against United shortly after, assisted Trossard's winner against Everton the next game, assisted Trossard a month later with that unstoppable cross to equalize at Stamford Bridge and get a point, whipped that same far post cross again a month later in the literal last minute for Havertz to win the game against Brentford. So many times last season, he was way more decisive and reliable in last-second clutch situations than the season before, where he often fumbled and looked nervous and panicky at times late in games. I remember in my video about the clutch gene a long while ago, I mentioned that it's not really something you're born with. It's simply getting used to being under high-pressure situations and being able to calm yourself, think logically, and as time goes on, start to get comfortable in those situations. Not a lot of y'all were here for that video, but I had mentioned how LeBron was a player that sucked in the clutch for a lot of his early career, and then out of nowhere in the second half of his career, he became one of the clutchest players in NBA history. You're not just blessed with a gene called reliability in high-stakes situations at birth. It's not a real tangible thing. It's something you gain with experience. Mo Salah has been that guy for Liverpool almost his entire career there. Usually solid for them, but it doesn't matter whether he's having a questionable performance or not. He can always pull out a goal contribution at any moment because he is a game breaker. Even in recent seasons like last year where he's clearly lost a step and he's not as explosive, Liverpool can still rely on him to snatch late goal contributions to get them points where they otherwise might have been asked out. Today, in the very first game of the season for Liverpool and Arsenal, Salah and Saka once again displayed the importance of game breakers in title-contending teams. Ipswich had a lot of Liverpool fans concerned after that first half, and then Salah calmly collects a goal and assist in the second half, and Liverpool walks away with a much more comfortable win than people thought it would be after a dominant second period showing. That can also be attributed to Trent going ballistic, by the way. I'm never going to miss a chance to give Trent credit. The point still stands, though. Today against Wolves, Saka puts up that very same cross for Havertz again, who punches it in. He really need to patent that shit soon. They over there trying to call it the Lamine Yamal cross. Nah, not yet. Hold on. In the second half, though, Wolves started putting the pressure on Arsenal. Saliba made a mistake. Partey made a couple mistakes. Raya was under fire and had to bail out his defense for a change. It looked like Arsenal coughing up their slim lead was inevitable. Then Saka just cuts in and fires one near post to give them some breathing room. Wolves still bothered them a bit. They had Buddy out there sexually assaulting Jesus and choking out Havertz. What was up with that dude? He freaky as hell. At the end of the day, though, Arsenal still pulled away. It's literally almost impossible to win any kind of major title without a game breaker. 2022 Arsenal was never going to keep up with City all the way. Since back then, I was saying that Arsenal would need to sign a player that gave them that edge, but Saka has literally grown into that player. Even some England fans are seeing it now after what he did against Switzerland. This isn't to say that he's always going to bang one in when his team is in trouble, but it's always better to have a player that can do it at least semi-consistently for your team. If we look back at league winners or Champions League winners in the last few decades, how many can you really say won it without a clear game breaker? I mean, maybe 2021 Chelsea. That team was so ideally constructed, though, especially for knockout football. It's a one-off, definitely an outlier. Everyone always jokes that Real Madrid have devil magic because they always seem to pull off wild comebacks and very late stoppage time victories with last-second goals on the brink of defeat. But if we're being real, all they did was stock up on game breakers. They've always done that. Last season, after losing Benzema, they still had Vinny. They brought in Jude and had Rodrigo too. Now they add Mbappe, so if you thought the witchcraft was already bad, it's only getting significantly worse. I wouldn't exactly say that Arsenal don't need another dynamic player. They absolutely do. Saka might be very reliable when it comes to staying on the pitch, but you don't want to depend on him so much that you end up with a last season situation where he's playing through injury half the year. Same for Liverpool. Salah is aging. You won't have him to depend on for much longer. If I'm them, I make that push for a guy like Florian Wirtz next summer. He obviously doesn't play Salah's position, but he does have that factor and the potential to be the focus of their attack in the future. For now, though, in the Premier League, Saka has elevated his late-game clutch factor to the point where sometimes you almost expect him to whip in that cross and find Havertz or Trossard when shit is looking sticky for Arsenal. Bolstering the attack and adjusting the left midfield is all they have left to address before it's time for City to get very concerned.